Vancouver, please welcome to the stage, hailing from the LEC, G2 Esports, and their opponents in this best of five, the representatives from the LTA South, FURIA! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MSI 2025 here in beautiful Vancouver, Canada. I am Captain Flowers here on the cast for the first time with my good friend and colleague, Chronicler from the LCK, to bring you this first best of five between G2 and FURIA, the LEC and the LTA South. Chronicler, are you ready for some International League of Legends?
Oh, you know I am. Can't wait to see whether today we are going to see an upset that we will never forget, or as the fans were expecting, 85% of the fan vote going the way of G2. Very clearly the favorites coming here today, and I can't believe it's you and me for the first time. I've been casting, obviously you've been casting way longer. I've been casting for almost 5 years now. Never happened, not in any capacity.
It's crazy that it hasn't happened yet, but I'm so glad it's happening here today. I'm so glad we are back again on the international stage, and hopefully we get a banger to kick things off here. You already mentioned it, the fans have a lot of faith in G2. I think a lot of viewers familiar with the team are going to have a lot of faith in G2. They are a very storied organization, and for FURIA, this is going to be the first time we're really seeing them on the international stage.
And that always comes with, I think, very different responses from players. Some players really thrive in that, right? They feel that absence of pressure. They're able to play without any reservation and really able to pop off and kind of catch their opponents off guard. But I think that's where, for FURIA, the opportunities will lie, right? Trying to get that explosive early game going. These players are within their region mechanically renowned. But the real problem, as so many teams and organizations have learned over the years, actually taking down G2 is much easier said than done.
It is a very difficult task indeed, and honestly, it's the story. When you look back throughout the history of international competition in League of Legends esports, when you think about emerging regions or tier 2 regions, as Brazil used to be in that category, and them going up against their bigger opponents from what were the major regions before, places like the LEC, the challenge was always, can you find that creative angle to be able to punch up successfully? And we're about to find out if that angle will present itself here as we make our way into the draft. It'll be FURIA on the blue side for game one. G2 electing to go to red. Remember that G2 get the side selection because of their seeding from first stand. Carmine Corp got second place in that tournament. That gives G2 the edge here. So they're opting for the red side.
Playing on patch 25.13, have seen some minor changes on this, but some bigger ones on point 12, but nothing to the extent of the shifts that we have seen before, right? Everyone can remember the Morgana Rumble MSI.
Yeah, that was
a memorable one.
That was a bit of a traumatic one for me personally.
Yeah, as a no skiff, and I wasn't the biggest fan. As we do see the TF, that's been one of the picks that people have really been talking about.
Yeah,
benefiting both from the buffs, and we already saw him kind of pop off towards the tail end of a lot of playoffs. And as you highlight, G2 going towards the red side. One of the things I do love about FURIA is their willingness to fully commit to a draft. I think both their Sejuani and their Yasuo drafts are kind of the standouts when you think of this, right? Being very happy to just go all the way. And on the red side, you do have a lot more opportunity to respond to those solo lanes, get favorable matchup, and make it harder for a player like Gigo to pop off too hard.
Yeah, we've got the Yone, the Pantheon, the Twisted Fate banned out by FURIA. Over on the G2 side, double AD carry bans, looking at IU, looking at the mechanical prowess there of the Brazilian AD carry, but also the Jax ban towards Gigo like you're talking about. And hey, Talia's up and open, Talia's locked in. I am entirely unsurprised.
Yeah, this goes unchanged. Talia still absolute top notch. And Viari, one of those jungle mid combos that at any point in the last like 4 years you could have picked up, it wouldn't have been too surprising.
And the Vi Ahri also being a good denial. Vi also a great pairing with the Talia to be able to set up the combo for the seismic shove. So you get your duo, you deny them a good duo. Feels like a really good response there for the first 2 picks of G2. Let's see how FURIA wants to respond to this one, taking their time, running down the clock on the second pick, sitting on this Shenjiao hover for a while, and they will go ahead and lock that one in. Another skirmisher that can scrap a lot early and deal with that Vi.
A lot more dueling power than the Vi, but obviously doesn't have the same level of backline access. We already saw a lot of attention being paid by G2 towards IO in the draft. Now top lane wouldn't surprise me, and okay, well, the Aatrox just coming out straight up. Has of course been played a decent amount, but that is a big show of confidence here towards Gigo as it comes through.
Yeah, throughout the spring split for Gigo, this was tied for his most picked champion alongside the Rumble there with 4 picks. Gigo is a player who is unafraid to pick whatever he thinks is going to work best for the game. It doesn't necessarily have to fit the state of the global metagame. So we'll see what Broken Blade is ready to pick into this, as the Kai'Sa is going to be locked instead, securing the AD carry for G2 before the second round of the bans come in. And look at this, Chronicler. G2 is already right back to the AD carry game, continuing to hit that pool.
Yeah, I don't think IU is going to be having the best of time.
Probably not.
The Kai'Sa, one of the downsides that you can run into it, obviously, is that the laning phase is relatively weak, but you already have an extremely strong dive core, and now we're also banning away things like the Xayah. Wouldn't be surprised if something like an Ezreal ban also comes through. That's the other AD carry they often go towards when it comes to a ton of innate safety. And the possibilities for IU are getting smaller and smaller, because for a lot of AD carries, just playing into this, if you don't get huge laning leads, is going to be tough. There's also the opportunity for G2 to go for a support counter pick, which can skew some of Kai'Sa's weaker matchups, where I think really her struggles often are in lane, is going to get taken off the board.
Not a final AD carry ban for G2 though, but a very effective peel champion in the Alistar. Like you already said, you've got a dive comp. You've got one of the few AD carries that can dive along with it. This is looking like a real torpedo coming out from G2 Esports in the first half of the draft. So being able to shut down FURIA's ability to stop that dive, I like what I'm seeing. Now, do FURIA want to ban one more top laner? Yes, they do. They will keep the Gwen away from Broken Blade.
And looking at this, the Renata, to me, kind of stands out as something that G2 probably wants to be very careful. The Nico is still open. That's been one of the most popular counter picks we've seen into the Renata. And obviously, when it comes to the laning phase, can really make life hard for her. But if you are already fully committed to playing this type of dive style composition, I do think Renata can really ruin your day, as this is something that was banned so many times against the Broken Blade, and it looks like those banned were warranted as the Warwick comes out.
I love this, man. Gigo is someone who is known to play his types of champions, and Broken Blade is exactly the same. He will throw down the Warwick to deal with this Aatrox. The fact that you can use the Warwick Q to buffer through some of those sweet spots on the Aatrox Qs is such a powerful outplay tool, but it's Neela locked in for IU. You want to try to dive onto an AD carry. How about an AD carry with a dodge mechanism?
Not only that, but Neela loves it when the entire team tries to jump into her, right? She can get so much value from the ultimate. I'm kind of loving this. And the Rakan, I think, is also a good pick away. There is still the Poppy open, so I do think that's kind of a smash hit, especially into the Neela as well. Even something like the Zinzo can really struggle with that. Poppy, to me, is also one of those picks that just always has value. But I love this. This is exactly what we were talking about earlier with FURIA, the ability and the willingness to just go for these type of picks. So the Neela, we have seen every now and then, right? It is a very niche champion. As you highlighted, she's very short range. Technically not melee, but let's be real. It's
a lot closer to melee than a normal AD carry.
It really is. And the ability to serve as both counter dive, as well as such a good ability to absorb a huge amount of burst initially with the healing that comes through from her ultimate, plus the fact, and this is something that I wonder how well IU and Jojo are going to be able to use that, the experience, right? In case you're not familiar with Neela, because obviously isn't a very popular champion by any means, if she's able to last hit, gets full value for both her and her lane partner in terms of experience. So building early level leads can snowball very quickly, right? We've seen in any region, in any point of League of Legends, the level 2 power spike be kind of a, even though we feel like at this point we should all know, we still see teams get caught off guard by it so often, and Neela makes that whole situation even more complicated.
I'm really looking forward to this. Anyone that's watched some LTA South so far this split knows that IU is a very mechanically gifted player. He is someone who's got the hands to be able to pilot whatever he needs to pilot to get the team to a good spot. And with those EXP advantages naturally built into the champion that you're talking about, I want to see, can the LTA South bot lane build themselves up an advantage that could then be a win condition in this matchup that the community is predicting to be 85% favored for G2 Esports?
As we get into game, can't wait to see what we're going to have ourselves here today. Flowers, as looking at the rune setups, not seeing anything too out of the ordinary just yet. The other thing, as we talked a lot about the TF, that is definitely going to be a token board this tournament, is that unsealed spellbook that we see here on JoJo. A rune that got buffed a couple of patches ago. We already saw so many supports go to it in the playoffs, and no different here.
Right, you lose some of that early trading power that you might have with something like a Guardian or similar, but as the game goes forward, you have so many more options. You have so many more ways to just catch your opponents. If they're not on top of it, always keeping track of what you're doing. There's plenty of opportunities to manage to throw a curveball at them, as we see Hansama and Labrov make their way into the bottom lane, looking for early positioning here in the side brush, but IU is going to see Hansama there.
New Broken Blade here. As you already highlighted, there is the ability for Broken Blade to deny some of the CC that comes through from Guigo. But I also think it's important to note how Aatrox works in a lot of matchups. He basically functions like kind of a soft poke champion, right? You're really just looking to get Q1 sweet spots. Eventually you hit enough CDR, but you don't want to go up against this lethal tempo Warwick because it might look like he's low. This Broken Blade is walking it off, but the sustain for a Warwick, as we're going to see now, I fear for Gigo, is something that's tough to deal with.
Yeah, Broken Blade on that Warwick. The champion is so deceptive in the way that it works, right? It doesn't seem like he should be able to win a lot of the fights that he does, but if the player knows his limits on the champion, if the pilot is adept at the character, it's a serious problem to deal with, and we know that Broken Blade has the skill on this pick to make it work, as Gigo is just trying to stay back and farm. Broken Blade takes a turret shot. Not going to be too happy about that one, but still winning out an EXP, health bars around the same level. Broken Blade just wants to get this wave crashed in, looked for an extra Q there for a quick trade. Gigo with a nice little punish with a Q2 of his own, and Broken Blade's going to get the full crash.
Yeah. Also do note, we have seen iterations of this Warwick where you play with Barrier, which is true. Like you can
the solo queue style.
You can straight up 1v2 or 1v2, right? If the enemy jungler shows up, very important that ward also highlighted. We see the ping. They did see it go down, but Broken Blade wasn't really in a position to get ganked because he did get his crash. It was just backing off. But there was also the knowledge on G2. I think also JoJo showed up a little bit late towards lane. Looking at bot lane, though, we already see a very early back forced out, and I was talking about the relative lack of laning strength of a Kai'Sa, but if you get an early lead, and also the Poppy obviously does really shift that matchup, because what you're going to do as Rakan into the Poppy, your early burst is something that needs to be respected. We see early lead already being built there, and no experience actually going over, because again, you do need to last hit on the Neela to get full value of that passive.
Okay, Tatu just going to clear out that topside Scuttle Crab. You can see the bottom one was already secured there by Skumon from G2. As looks like we might see Tatu try to make something happen up here, but he is going to walk over that ward in the Pixel Brush that was placed down by Broken Blade. So Broken Blade knows, hey, just play it nice and slow here. Allow this wave to continue pushing up. Don't go too crazy here onto Gigo. Tatu already taking his back as Broken Blade, just again, trying to constantly be as aggressive as you can, using those Qs on cooldown with the Warwick. Nice slam into the wall there from Labrov on this Poppy. Steadfast presence in the back end of things just to try to make it so if JoJo jumps in and then tries to battle dance back out, he will be interrupted. And I do want to keep an eye on how effective Labrov is with these steadfast presences this game. It's very powerful against Rakan. It also has pretty great effect against Xin Zhao, Neela, and Aatrox as well. Just super, super good pick, I think, here on the R5 for G2. Broken
it really
Blade.
is, and it also takes it out.
Broken Blade had to flash away. Gigo nearly got him there on the solo kill. That was death's door for the dog.
Yeah, we talk about wanting to be low on Warwick. Not that low. That was
20 HP.
That was a little dangerous. Fortunately, in this case, he does have the teleport available, so that won't be too heavy of a payment. But losing the Summoner does mean that it might provide an opportunity to get this Aatrox out of the lane. He is going to use it immediately, I imagine, to try and maybe get an opportunity to play elsewhere on the map, because I don't think Broken Blade in time would have been able to really get the shove. Obviously, Warwick early on doesn't have the greatest wave clear. Yeah. Does rely on his items to really get that going. You do need to be careful, though, in this longer lane. I know he just went back. Broken Blade... He's still going. The lethal tempo stacking.
Yeah, Broken Blade's looking to keep this one going on there. Wants to find the fear. Gigo flashes away from it so he doesn't get hit by the CC, but Gigo's going to need the Qs to come back up yet again. Q2 hits! First blood solo kill for Gigo in the top lane. Broken Blade is down, but now G2's looking for a counter punch here in the bottom side instead. IU's going to be in some danger. Slam back into the wall from Labrov, but now dashes away to try to escape. Flash from Han Sama, and G2 evens up the score.
Really big that they get the kill there onto IU, because they needed to make an immediate cross map. An unforced error there as Gigo just straight up solo bolus. The counter pick Warwick. BB maybe overestimating his sustain. Could also be that he thought he was going to hit level 6. I didn't see what it, but looking at the XP timer, there's no shot, right? Because even now he's not really that close to 6. This is a Xin Zhao here. Yeah. And look for the steal.
Tatu throughout the wind becomes lightning, but didn't find a target with it. Now jumping in after Labrov. Jojo's ready to show up. We will at least get a smite fight over this. As there it is, TY for Leash. Furia secures themselves the first Drake after G2 started it up in their faces.
They go to 13. Got the Drake. Doesn't matter. As there we saw, G2, again, understandably, that you want to try and get Drake as well. You just got a successful playoff towards the bot side. As we take a look here, and... if you have barrier, I can see this work, right? Like, and it's something that we often go towards. Even then, I think it is really risky, but you have so much build and sustain on the passive on your W. But even without that level up, like, this wasn't particularly close. And you see, BB as well knows this was... yeah. It didn't even feel like it was a necessity, right? There's situations where I feel like if your wave state is really well, boy, you need to... but the wave state was fine.
We might just have another problem here, Chronicler. As right back in he goes. Gigo's trying to make this one into another solo kill! Gigo is making Broken Blade look foolish in this 1v1.
Yeah, the first one, it happens, right? Sometimes you just overestimate how much sustain you have. That one, though, that can't happen. You can't just be giving leads like this as Gigo on the Aatrox, full of confidence, understandably, has the ultimate available. And if Broken Blade goes for this plays approximately a couple of seconds later, maybe it's fine. The timing there again, Gigo able to simultaneously stack his Conqueror, walk away from the fear, and then here he still gets the damage off. And the Executioners means that Broken Blade doesn't heal that much. Qmon sees this like, if I go into that Aatrox when it's clear my work is... I'm going to get blown up. Like, there's no shot that you win that. There's just not enough damage. And... the miscommunication there, the timing from Broken Blade not quite on point, but then we look at the gold graph, and we do need to talk about the bot lane situation. Yeah. Because that one is looking a lot better for G2, and it's why they're still sitting on a gold lead.
Exactly. Han Sama and Labrov have built themselves an impressive lead down here in the bottom lane. Caps now having to use that Spirit Rush to get away from Jojo, who did go for the grand entrance after him. Caps only needed the single charge, but forcing the ulti out. Still going to be a win there in the mid lane. At the same time, it looks like Furia is now going to collect all 3 grubs, no contest. So both of the first neutral objectives go over to the side of Furia and Tatu. They are still down in that gold like you talked about. Han Sama is still up almost 4 full waves of farm in that Kai'Sa versus Nilah matchup down in the bottom lane. And back to what you were talking about earlier, all those lesser last hits for IU are an even bigger problem because of the nature of Nilah and her passive.
The funniest thing, though, despite everything, if you look at IU, he's still ahead in experience. Even and that kind of...
but imagine where he could be.
I know, it could be so much better. And that's kind of puts into perspective the value of the Nilah. Nilah, to me, is also one of the picks where her first spike feels okay, but particularly when you get to that traditional break point for AD carries, you know, the free item spike, when you get all your crit online, but she becomes so tanky because with the amount of healing that is in her kit, as you get later into the game, there's obviously going to be more of a 5v5 situation, and actually shutting her down becomes really hard. That said, Hans has set up on literally every single member of his team, as Labrov should be fine here, but they're going to chase for a little bit longer, it looks like.
Yeah, slightly more at least. JoJo goes in further than everyone else. This might have been a bit of a miscalculation here from JoJo. Nobody else on FURIA following up on that play, so JoJo just getting a little bit too excited, maybe a bit ahead of himself. Loses half his health bar for it, luckily not forcing out any sums though.
Yeah, not the end of the world. We do see, I think we saw some hesitation there where they're like, is this a trap?
Yeah.
Like, are we being baited in? It wasn't, but obviously FURIA doesn't know that, as Gigo on his way. The timing could be here for Skewmont to save his top laner.
Yeah, this would be a big one there for Skewmont. Immediately Broken Blade trying to jump in with a counter ulti as Gigo has gone too far, and it's a beautiful shutdown from Skewmont. He's ready to chase him down with a my ulti. Toots tries to escape with a seismic shove defensively, but Caps is on the hunt. He clears the unraveled earth. Another charge of the Spirit Rush is ready to go, and Toots is trapped as the feat of warfare is claimed by G2.
Oh, the blast cone. They didn't quite get him to safety the way he was hoping for, and that is a big, big win here for G2 as they get really 2 uncontested kills. There's no cross map available. That is also a shutdown, I'm pretty sure, going over there from Gigo, and that dive towards topside felt like maybe a little bit too telegraphed. Skewmont in the correct position.
Yeah.
And even a Talia wall can't get you away from Vi. Unfortunately.
Let's see. Doesn't look like we're going to get a whole lot more here, but I do want to give props to Skewmont playing in his first international event, being able to have the game sense, have the knowledge, have the presence to stop what would have been another disaster up there in the top lane. If Skewmont's not in the right spot, all of a sudden Broken Blade is even further behind.
Skewmont.
Toots now could be in a bit of a rough spot himself. Skewmont ulti not quite ready to go again on the Vi just yet, so Toots can get plenty of distance in time as FURIA is going to start up the next Drake themselves, but they got to be careful. Hans and Labrov might be able to stop him, but instead Hans is going to get caught out. Has to use Killer Instinct defensively, and now Skewmont is coming in for the counter attack. FURIA have overplayed their hand yet again. Labrov is ready to flash forward and try to make something happen when it becomes lightning firing right back. Tatu down to 50 HP. He's got to continue his retreat. Nobody dead on either side. But G2 has the full health jungler and control over the Drake pit.
Really big win for G2 because they get a bunch of sums with that as well. As we do see, Tatu had to use his flash. He also used there for JoJo. And they get the dragon. And the first dragon plus the first couple of grubs went over, well, the only couple of grubs now, obviously, went over to FURIA, but not going to be continuing that objective stacking. And this is kind of what I think unfortunately happens often, right? Like the early laning, it looked great, but when it comes to these movements on the map, this play just a little bit too telegraphed. And now you see that TP coming in as well. They were ready. They knew this was coming, right? The wave crash was obviously being prepared, as there, unfortunately, doesn't quite make it out. As that's one of the longest Vi ults I've seen.
Yeah, that was cross-country Vi ulti. And then you mentioned the blast cone.
Kara, with Caps only having a single charge on his ult, I think he would have gotten out, especially with the Talia passive. If he just gets to the turret, I think he might have been fine. Caps still did have flash, so maybe he dies nonetheless. But that's definitely going to sting. And now, gold lead being further built upon there for G2.
Yep, 30 seconds left until the turret plates fall. The Drakes are 1-1, so it's not like FURIA is starting towards a Drake stacking win condition, really. Yeah. They got 3 grubs, that's going to feel nice, but grubs are always more of a down payment objective, right? You still need to be able to get plates, you still need to be able to get turrets with them to really get great value, and if G2 is commanding a solid gold lead, it's that much harder to make that happen. Broken Blade obviously has been the one struggling the most in the early game here for G2, but on the Warwick now, just continuing to try to farm up, make sure that he stays relevant for when it gets time for those bigger fights so that they can deal with FURIA in a team fight scenario.
Let's see the ward getting spotted there.
Oh boy. Broken Blade defensive ulti trying to walk away. Skewmont flashing out of the way there of the seismic shove and unraveled earth. Remember, you can't use the vault breaker over it or the rocks are going to interrupt you. Uses the flash instead since it's a blink and manages to get to safety. But that first turret is going to fall and it'll be FURIA taking it. There is the payday on the grubs right there for Toots and FURIA.
will be answered by a turret towards the bot lane. I do think, although it looks like Hans instead going to go for the base, which makes sense because Herald is spawning in about 15 seconds. So minions are going to crash here. TP not quite available for Gigo just yet, and Skewmond does get found here.
Yeah, Skewmond TP trying to get out of this one. FURIA is ready to commit to it. Toots is coming in. We're going to need to see a seismic shove, but Labrov and Caps playing protection, stopping this from working out. Broken Blade thinking about joining up with the fight if he needs to, but instead goes back to shove out one more wave. Does have the Tiamat now on the Warwick for the extra wave push capability. Charm onto Tatu, followed up by Labrov. FURIA now in full defense mode. G2 doesn't get any kills, but they get significant damage onto 3 separate health bars for control over the Rift Herald.
And that should be the call from FURIA to just not contest this, right? The health bar's already battered. Gigo has the opportunity to take a turret towards the bottom side of the map, but the value of this Poppy, I think we're only going to see more and more of as this game continues. The ability to turn fights into a moment's notice, get yourself a numbers advantage as the Herald goes through, is traded. So right now, FURIA ahead. Once the Herald comes down, I imagine towards the mid lane, often used there just to ensure that you get as much map control as possible.
Yeah, nicely done by Gigo to take that turret down there in bottom lane. And Chronicler, we now have a battle for the boots. Feats of Warfare were claimed by G2. The first turret was claimed by FURIA. Both teams now sitting on 2 neutral objectives. If Skewmond gets caught out a little bit here, Exhaust will be committed on that one. They're going to put the quickness into it as well. Skewmond nearly dead, but not quite. And it'll be Gigo taking the 3rd kill of the game for FURIA. All 3 kills on this top lane Aatrox. This is the man, this is the raid boss for the Brazilian team.
And the composition for G2 is obviously extremely short range. That is the type of situations where, as an Aatrox, if you are fed, if your team buys enough space for you, you can really pop off. The downside for FURIA, there isn't an objective right now to get. Also, they did invest a decent amount of cooldowns, but they should be available in about 50 seconds when that dragon spawns. Looking at the Cloud Drake, obviously, big fan. The movement speed, always very valuable. Looking at some of the ultimates, there's some characters where, like, yeah, you know, Talia, Warwick, your captain plays. But on Aatrox now, on Ahri, or on a Kai'Sa, and Rakan obviously is another one. Even the Nila, it kind of goes hard.
And I mean, even if we're not considering the ultimate boost, just the basic movement speed boost that you get from the Soul is always... movement speed and range are the 2 strongest stats in League of Legends,
just
right?
Walk.
Like, yeah, just walk faster than the guy can dash. You don't have a problem. As Gigo might have a problem here. It's a 3-man play coming in from the side of G2. Labrov and Skewmond ready to join up for this one. But the early flash from Gigo to get himself out of the range of danger guarantees that G2's collapse will not result in a kill. They've still overloaded this bottom lane. They're still looking to force down the tier 1 turret, and they should be able to get away with it. But now FURIA pushing the tier 1 over in mid at the same time. Broken Blade might get cut off. Tag with the wind becomes lightning. Toots trying to get away alongside Ayu, but Toots is going to be your target as Hans Sama looks for a little bit more damage. Apotheosis from Ayu. A lot of damage back into Skewmond. Tatu's going in. Ayu's got the kill into Skewmond, and now Broken Blade's in the middle of everybody. A double kill back over to Nila. G2 have lost 2. Labrov trying to retreat now. Caps caught out. Shot down. Triple kill. Ayu.
Guys, that's a Nila! Just jump into her like that. It's a delayed engage. It's kind of staggered from G2, as Ayu might straight up die.
Yeah,
Ayu should be fine.
Okay, he's good. He had the minion.
Fine.
He had the minion. It was calculated.
Oh my God,
he's good.
Mode game on point as well.
Yeah. He's got this, and at the same time, FURIA has now earned themselves control over the bottom side river. Yes, they barely miss out on the tier 1 turret mid lane. 1 minion auto attack will kill that later on. The dragon is going to go over to Tatu. Hans Sama in a bad spot here, has enough distance to escape the infernal chains. But what about the Rakan? What about the grand entrance? What about Hans Sama's exit? FURIA 7-3, 2,000 gold ahead.
And G2, these traps from FURIA, they keep falling for it as we take another look here. The big thing, again, with Nila is that if you don't 100 to 0 her, it's so hard to actually get value. And instead, it looks like they're going on Toots, but this is a Talia, right? Actually getting on top of her is kind of hard, and they just don't have the damage with just the 2. They're kind of caught off guard, I think, by the amount of people that are ready. Gigo even comes in from the back there. And a lot of the previous... Oh, Labrov.
I don't think we have time to talk about previous plays, my friend. We're already into the next, and Labrov is already going back to Fountain.
And on the previous kills, even the solo kills, I don't think those were necessarily of too much value, because they're just kills, it's a little bit of money, but as we saw, the gold lead didn't meaningfully change, but now, the Drake went over, right? Mid lane turret has fallen for G2. They are rapidly losing control of this game. And if we start to see an Otacon setup here, that is a possibility for G2 to find an angle back. I've seen so many teams not respect the fact that Otacon turns everyone on your team into a paperback. So I do hope that FURIA is careful with that. The B1 to Leah, though, for me, is the biggest pickup as all.
Jojo stepping in there to intercept the charm from Caps, guarantee that IU does not get caught out. Caps did spin the Spirit Rush on that. We'll see if FURIA can find a chance to use that window to punish, but G2 is instead going to give them another problem to think about, summoning up the Rift Herald from earlier here in the mid lane. The Tier 1 turret will die just to the charge alone, so they'll claim that one. Rift Herald will not be able to get the charge off onto the Tier 2 turret, or at least should not be able to get that. Toots will guarantee it here. But we're getting to the point of the game, Chronicler, where now I think it will be the real test for FURIA. I do want to give them credit. I do want to commend them for what has been a very impressive first 20 minutes of the game, building this nearly 3,000 gold lead, taking the feeds, taking the lead in terms of objectives. But now we're at that mid-game point where traditionally we've seen teams from Brazil struggle to be able to control the objectives, play the macro game, and convert leads to wins.
It's the actual closeout, right? Like, again, I think they're in a really good position right now. I also think when talking about the scaling, it's a pretty interesting conversation, because to me, there are drafts where Nila feels like unless you get like a 5-man ultimate, the value is not always quite as high as when they go on Lebrov, but not going to find anyone just yet. But when it comes to, again, a full short-range comp on the enemy team, as those wards actually paying off as Broken Blade.
Here we go again. Infernal Chains hit, and that forces out the flash. So BB's going to live on this one, but that's all he'll do. Now that Warwick, much less effective.
And there's no ultimate on the Aatrox. Lebrov has a little bit of vision, so is checking. The Poppy, for me, is one of the reasons why I think FURIA still need to be very respectful. You might be feeling confident, but at any moment's notice, you can suddenly be 2 members down. Oh, Tadu?
Yeah, let's see here. Tatu, Broken Blade, defensive ulti over the wall, gets himself away to safety, but now he's not ready to join up here in this fight. Caps is up in the top lane looking to take down that turret instead, as the Otacon is down to half HP. FURIA's got 5 men down here. IU's the one tanking up that Otacon, though, and you got to be careful. If IU gets debuffed, you're going to have a problem. Lebrov wants to find the Keeper's Verdict, but he doesn't find anything. Tatu jumping right back in, immediately the quickness back on Lebrov. The Poppy in some danger. Guigo ready to follow up. Lebrov not going anywhere except a black and white screen as Otacon is claimed by FURIA. Gigo even now right back up into the top side. Caps wanted to get the Tier 2 turret, and yes, he will, but can he get away at the same time? A flash for a flash, as Caps has a blast cone to get himself away to safety. Caps will find some global gold for his team, but the Otacon goes to FURIA.
And Broken Blade didn't have ult. The Poppy ult was too obvious. I think he got 1 flash, but it didn't get any of the members, which really is what you're looking for. And then your only member with a substantial gold lead, who also had his death cap finished, wasn't even there, right? And I think that makes sense. G2 doesn't really want the fight. They just want to try and look for a steal on the Otacon.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can have Caps TP in, but the moment that the Poppy ult doesn't hit, that's just kind of it. There isn't really a way that you can fight with the lead that FURIA have available right now, and these leads are just being stacked upon each other. There is still, for G2, when it comes to the item finishes, not too much of a deficit. But this Drake fight, this might be a breaking point. If Soul Point is picked up, could be really big, because I think having Soul Point means that your macro decisions down like it's so much easier, because at any point, you just give up a dragon or 2 and make a play towards an inhib, make a play towards the Baron. But I talk about simplifying decision making. I feel like FURIA don't need the simplification, because thus far, that for Drake just being given over here.
I've been very impressed with the game so far from FURIA, and now moving on to Soul Point. This just shows how critical it was earlier that G2 did manage to secure that second Drake for themselves. Imagine if this is a 24-minute Cloud Soul for FURIA instead. All of a sudden, if you're G2, you're saying, all right, let's look ahead to the second game, right?
No, that's yeah, I'm looking at the champions with FURIA. That's not That's not okay.
Right.
So that might happen in 5 minutes.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Now G2, they're on the back foot. They've got to be ready for this. The gold lead is still not going to suffocate them, but they haven't seemed super coordinated so far. It seemed like not everybody's quite on the same page.
That's the biggest thing. The sync up and the buy-in on FURIA is, I think, their biggest advantage that they've had so far. It feels like everyone is just always ready to throw down with everyone whenever a call is made. And with G2, we've seen some staggered engages, we've seen some missed timings, I think in particular, looking at that topside play from BB, right? And then Skewmon coming in, timing not quite there. Looking at the mid lane play where they're trying to find what looks like a punish, end up falling for the trap instead. And now the Baron is up. The one thing that G2, outside of the Poppy, does have is the ability to take out any member if it is a sole member. And I think that that is going to be one of their biggest abilities. And I think we're starting to see them set up for that as well. Is trying to just find a side lane catch. Their single target CC and damage, absolutely outrageous, but there is a defensive ward there. Oh.
This could be a huge... This is the most fed member of FURIA, and he is now getting caught out. If Gigo dies before the fight starts, G2 might have just found the pick to turn the game on its head. The shutdown over to Skewmon, but it will be traded back 1 for 1.
Ayu.
Now Ayu's ready to show up, but he's isolated. Ayu's over on the other side of the fight. He's all alone. He has to flash over the wall to join up with the rest of the team. Caps is already down. Tatu's got the kill on the Caps, and Toots is not done chasing. Broken Blade and Han Sama are on the run. Toots flashes over the wall, and BB tries to bite back, but the dog's been declawed, and Broken Blade is down again. Right when it looks like G2 found their moment, FURIA found G2.
That's Nash! Straight up, and G2, they look for the side lane pick, but taking out his Aatrox takes so much longer than I think they bargained for, and it's again the response from FURIA. The immediate rest of the teammate arriving in a moment's notice. And even though the Aatrox goes down, it doesn't matter. They don't actually get the damage to take down that Neil. And then on the other end of the fight, obviously, G2, having blown everything, trying to kill this Aatrox, he is 6 levels up on Lebrov, right? Like, actually taking him down with the heal that comes through from the Aatrox, with the heal from his ultimate, it just takes too long. It takes too many cooldowns. And then this to Leah value has just been kind of insane to me. The amount of picks that we've seen that just are followed up on by that seismic shove, it's amazing. Tatu on the Zinza also, every time he goes in, someone on G2 dies. His decision-making has been so good. Now with the Baron.
Here we go again, man. Broken Blade with another defensive ulti here. Gigo is behind enemy lines. Now getting jumped on by Skewmon over the wall, but Gigo is not down. The healing from the Aatrox baits in Han Sama, and FURIA is furious in the face of G2 Esports. The inhibitor turret in mid lane broken as the inhibitor is about to follow. Gigo is back in the base, but he's got his teleport. He's joining back up with the rest of FURIA. It's a 5-man push with a Baron against 3 G2 defenders. FURIA has made their way onto the Nexus turrets. The first is already down. G2 are out of sorts. They cannot defend. Caps has to flash away from the apotheosis just to survive, but the rest of G2 cannot do the same. FURIA win the first game of MSI 2025.
And the crowd goes wild.
Understandably.
As they should, Captain. Because if you come